Chapter 17 Biology Theory Video 9. Artificial selection is what we are going to discuss about. So, as you may understand from the word artificial means that human involvement is there. So, this if we select that is humans, if they select which organisms should survive and which survive and reproduce, and which organism should die off, then that would be known as artificial selection. So this has been done for thousands of years without having that much of a knowledge about genetics, but still we have carried out this to get the different kinds of breeds of horses, dogs, and different other animals, cows, and also for plants like different types of maize or rice or whatever it is. We have carried out this genetic not exactly genetic alterations, but in usually what happens is some qualities, some characteristics of these animals and plants are concentrated, and undesirable characteristics are wiped out. Now you know that dogs are the ancestors of the wolves are the ancestors of modern day dogs, but many dogs, many breeds of dogs look nothing like the wolves. Now you know that in countries like Brazil and in United States, there are small breeds of dogs known as Chihuahua, and it is really surprising that they may also their ancestors may also be wolves who are very much larger than these animals. Then there are some animals who have the pugs. They have their faces almost flattened out. So these animals are a result of artificial selection. So usually what happens is, now if you want a breed of horses who can run fast, or to have higher strength capacity to pull heavy loads, then cattle to produce more milk or more meat, so then they will do this artificial selection. Now if you take a maize that is to be bred to produce heavier yields, or to survive the conditions where water is scarce, or to be resistant from parasitic fungi, or to resist against bacterial or viral infections. So against all of these things, we do the same thing, artificial selection. The artificial selection would have several steps. The first is the population that is to be used for artificial selection must show some variation. That is, some individuals in a variety of wheat may have resistance to a disease while the others are killed by it. So what we do is we take the variety that resists the disease. Then so the breeder will take an individual, it could be a plant or an animal, an individual that has the feature that she wants for the future generations to have. So then in this particular case we are talking about maize, so she would select a plant that has better resistance to the disease than other individuals. So then she would then select another parent plant from the same variety and have good resistance to disease. Then now in some cases she might select a parent from a different variety that would have another beneficial characteristic not borne by the other plant that she has selected. So this, if she combines these two varieties, then she will be producing a new variety, a variety that did not exist earlier, that has a better combination of the disease resistance and also high yield. So then these chosen parents would be bred together, which naturally might not occur. or might not have the opportunity to do so, and then the resulting offspring will be allowed to grow into adulthood and would be tested. So if the breeder is trying to produce a variety of wheat with good resistance to disease, so then she will expose during the testing process, she will expose the plant to the disease, and then she will select out of this group, she will select the best ones, that means the ones that will not die off as a result of the disease, or that show the greatest resistance, and also we'll look at the high yield. So whatever the if both of the qualities are required, then whatever produces highest yield as well as the highest resistance will be chosen, and then they will be reproduced. When this reproduction goes on for many generations, when by selecting the best individuals for breeding, then finally she will get a set of plants that has the desired characteristics, and she will be able to have a higher yield and disease resistance plants. I hope you understood. Then at the end of the process, all the plants would have desired characteristics and will be able to interbreed. There would be we can make them to interbreed among themselves to produce the same characteristics. So that means they are going to be homozygous at all gene loci that would control the feature. So this is gained without knowing too much about genetics. We don't have to know anything about genetics. We can look at only at the phenotype. We don't need to know anything about the genotype. So if we can produce a new plant, there is a new variety from this, or else we can continue the same varieties by making it interbreed between the same variety. However, we are improving the chances of having that desirable quality. Write down a note on this: artificial selection. The selection by humans of organisms with desired traits to survive and reproduce. This is also known as selective breeding. For example, to breed horses that can run fast or have higher strength to pull heavy loads, cattle to produce more milk or more meat, maize to produce heavier yields or to be resistant to attack from parasitic fungi, etc. There are several steps involved. Number 1, a population that shows some variation is selected. Example, a variety of wheat, some having a resistance to a disease, others which get killed by it. Number 2, the desirable wheat individuals would be selected. Number 3, another parent, either from the same variety with good resistance to the disease or a different parent, or a parent from a different variety of wheat. So obviously this has to be wheat. You can't select a mango tree and make it breed with wheat. So they have to be compatible as well, right? write down a parent from a different variety that shows another beneficial characteristic such as high yield is chosen. Number 4, the two chosen parents are then bred together. Number 5, the resulting offspring are allowed to reach adulthood and are tested against the diseases and for their high crop. Number 6, this process is repeated for many generations, each time selecting the best individuals for breeding until all the individuals of the next generation show the desired characteristics. Put a star and write down. These individuals are all homozygous at all the gene loci that are related to these features. Simply by looking at the phenotype, artificial selection can be continued to bring about the desirable feature. Right. So now we are going to deal with disease resistance to varieties of wheat and rice. Most modern varieties of wheat belong to the species Triticum aestivium. So the selective breeding has produced different varieties of wheat. Most of these wheat is actually converted into bread flour. As a result, they are grown to produce wheat which are rich in gluten. So then to produce other products such as pastry, they have less gluten or gluten-free products. So this is actually done by this artificial breeding. So that is something that you need, artificial selection and artificial breeding. So this breeding is will have to be controlled in a regular pattern to bring out the desired results. Now when you have to breed for resistance to against various fungal diseases such as head blight, which is caused by Fusarium, we have to be very cautious as to select the type varieties of wheat that are resistant to this disease, because when a plant is exposed to a disease, its yield will drop significantly, and sometimes it will be entirely perished. So then what these breeders can do is they can introduce an allele that gives the resistance to this particular disease. But this is not going to happen overnight. It is going to take many generations. And for example, in different parts of the world, wheat is grown, and there are different types of diseases depending on the climate in each of those areas. There was in 2003 in the United Kingdom, they developed a network which is called the Wheat Genetic Improvement Network. So they bring together all of these research workers and commercial plant breeders, and they share their information, and they share the new varieties that they have developed, and they collect and screen the seeds that they have, and they find out what are more resistive, which have the highest resistance against diseases, or which plants are smaller and gives a higher yield. So different kind of things. So the whatever the suitable triads uh, would be grown, and they will be passed on to commercial breeders for them to breed. Then rice, Oryza sativa, is also very much into selective breeding. Now, if you ask your parents what they ate when they were little, they would say that they had only one or two varieties of rice, but not much. But now, if you go to any plantation, you would see many varieties are present. And also, during the earlier times, without knowing much about different varieties, people used to eat lot of varieties as well. So this selective breeding has been going on for a long period of time. There is something called the International Rice Research Institute in Philippines. They have a gene bank for rice, and also they have there are other organizations, and what they do is they improve the ability of rice farmers to feed growing population. So what you need to do is you need to improve the yield of rice. Now there are bacterial blight and different fungal diseases which actually creates different spots and smuts on these rice plants. This These are eliminated by using the plants that show resistance to these diseases. They develop them, and then as a result they are able to produce better plants, right? And to give you an example, when compared with the beginning of the last century and comparing the beginning of this century, the yield has almost doubled in a rice plant. That is, if you could take this is a number these are not the actual numbers. For comparison purposes, I'm telling you, if you can take 2 bushels of rice or rice from an acre of land, if you could have taken a single bushel of rice from a single acre in 1900s, now you can actually take 2 or 3 bushels of rice from a single acre. So that is the improvement that has been gained by these genetic variations. Write down a note on this. Introduction of disease resistance to varieties of wheat and rice. By selective breeding or artificial selection, most desirable wheat or rice plants are grown which would have the characteristics that are most desirable. For example, showing resistance to diseases or producing a higher yield. I hope you understood. If you have any doubts, please ask.